Just read some history. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just telling you how the world has always worked.
Yep.
This is the way the world has always worked, just as from the Old Testament, they had 7 good years and 7 bad years. I mean, this has been going on a long, long, long time. So don't listen to me. Just read some history, do your own research, and then you will get knowledgeable. And if you get knowledgeable, you will get worried, because you will see this has happened many times before, and it's going to happen again, as it always has. And those who are prepared and knowledgeable will do well and survive. Some people came out of the 30s very rich. The world has had many reserve currencies, international mediums of exchange in history. None of them have survived. None of them have lasted more than 100, 150 years or so. I'm delighted that the US dollar has been on top for many decades, but history would indicate that it's going to come to an end and that maybe it's time. I mean, we've been on top a long time for economic reasons. We are the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, so there are financial reasons for people to look for something else. There are also political reasons, as you aptly point out. All of a sudden, I mean, if Washington gets angry at you, too bad, they cut you off. Or they confiscate your assets. They just take your assets. They say, okay, they're ours now. So as you point out, many people, including our friends, are starting to say, wait a minute, guys. Wait a minute, this is not the way it's supposed to work. If I have an international medium of exchange, I should be able to use it for anything I want anywhere in the world. Well, it's sinking in to many people that there are many reasons to start looking for a competitor, and many major players in the world are looking for a competitor, something to compete with the US dollar. I don't like this, but I can see it happening, and we all have to adjust to it, whether we like it or not. I don't know. Normally, I would think it would be the Chinese currency, because for many reasons, but the Chinese currency is a blocked currency. I mean, I can go online and buy the euro if I want, or the US dollar. I cannot buy and sell the Chinese currency easily. So that's not a player at the moment anyway. Maybe that will change. I am looking for the new competitor to the US dollar, but it's happening. It's happening before our eyes if you bother to look, and it's going to be, I remember when the pound sterling lost its status as the reserve. In 1920s, Britain was the richest, most powerful country in the world. It was number one. There was no number two. There was no rival in the 20s. 50 years later, 1976 to be precise, Britain was bankrupt. Literally, the IMF had to bail out Great Britain because they were bankrupt. They went from no competitor to total bankruptcy. So it has happened, it can happen, and it will happen to everybody eventually in the big scheme of history. And as I say, I don't know. By 1776, the dollar was rising strongly. It had a great play after the Second World War. But unfortunately, that play has been going on for a long time. And I say, I don't know what it's going to be. I do want to just say, because I lived through that when the English lost that status and when they went bankrupt. And it was a nightmare for the English. Many English people they left their country because of what was happening. I mean, some people the Beatles didn't leave. The Beatles didn't leave England in the 60s, and they did extremely well. But many, many other people left England in those days because it was such a nightmare. It's usually a process. More and more people get affected as more and more measures get taken by the politicians to save you. They hurt you always, but it's usually a process. Now, eventually, it's like I can remember 1976 when Britain went bankrupt. It was on the evening news everywhere when that happened. But that process had been in train for several years, several decades. We all know the problems, the political and economic problems of the US dollar. It's not a secret. Everybody knows it, and everybody knows that people are looking it's being accelerated. I mean, the Ukraine war has accelerated this surge because of what the U.S. did. You know, they just seized assets. They blocked assets of innocent people. They just said, we suspect something's up, and they seized their assets or blocked their assets. So many people, this movement is being accelerated by Washington's action, our actions, I hate to say. So yes, it just makes, and many people know that gold has been around for centuries. By the way, silver has been much more often used as the backing for currencies throughout history. I mean, Jesus Christ was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Yeah. He wasn't sold for 30 pieces of gold. Well, actually, the U.S. currency, when America was founded as a nation, the U.S. dollar was first backed by silver. It was a silver-backed currency in 1792 when we set up the monetary system, etc. So the silver has been around and more common. China in the 1930s was a silver-based economy. Many places have been silver, but it doesn't matter whether it's silver, gold, or seashells. You know, people come up with something to back the currency. It makes sense because people, as I've explained before, what are we going to do? And people, they look around, they don't see anything else. So they say, well, why don't we back a currency with something real? Everybody knows what gold is, silver, wheat, whatever it happens to be. So it is a very likely scenario that people will try for a while, especially if we have more and more problems and crises. And eventually, a gold-backed currency has problems too. That's why they always get changed. And the politicians, it's too hard for the politicians. They say, oh my gosh, this is too hard. So they change the rules. They're always changing the rules. So then they will get rid of the gold standard again, or the silver standard, or whatever. There was a study not so long ago that showed that the American politicians, when they were kids, they excelled at playground. They were the best kids during recess at playground. So that's why they become successful politicians. They don't know what they're doing, and they want the easy way. So yes, the easy way at one point, seemingly, may be gold or silver-backed currencies. But eventually that causes discipline, and they change the rules again for historic reasons. Mainly, I mean, India is a gigantic consumer of gold and silver for many reasons, for many decades. The Chinese are becoming more and more gold-oriented and more silver-oriented. But this, again, it's historic. You go through periods when you get suspicious about your government or suspicious about your currency. They know. I mean, I'm an old peasant, Adam, and all of us old peasants know that when things get bad, we want some gold under the closet, under the bed. We want some silver in the closet. We know, because all of us old peasants have been around long enough to know what goes wrong. So, right now in Asia, they see what's happening for whatever reason more vividly than we seem to in the West. And they are, not just Asia, but many people are buying more and more gold and silver and putting it under the bed, putting it in the closet, including me. You know, when I first came to China, or even decades ago, it was hard to buy gold in China. Now there are many gold shops, many banks. You can go in and they will sell you gold coins, gold, silver coins. I mean, it's very easy now because the demand is obviously there. These shops wouldn't crop up, these banks wouldn't pop up unless there was demand. So yes, I mean, you and I read the same statistic. These numbers are easily available. The Indians are buying, a lot of Asians. I mean, yes, Westerners too, but especially Asians who have lived through periods of bad times before.